Sleepers, Chapter 9, Umbrellas. Whether from my uncharacteristic appeal, or the brazen pressure from his father, Ray acquiesced and settled on the Matson Presidential Heritage track. Ray accepted the Cornell offer to enter the chemistry department in the Sleep College. Ray's father, the world, and I got exactly what we wanted, and Ray wondered if he would have time to paint between organic chemistry and dream interpretation. My father called me into the home office the day before leaving. I almost ignored his invitation, never quite having accepted that room as anything other than a torture chamber. The stonework, the mahogany desks, the books, they all seemed to get colder with the years, an uninviting relic from dark days. John Jr. stood with his rear resting against the desk. Somehow the body language was supposed to put me at ease, but I wasn't buying it.
"Sit down, son. I know you'll be gone tomorrow and have little room for lessons from your father, but I want to share some thoughts. You remember the matchmaker and the doppelganger?"
"Please don't make me listen to that one again," I begged as I slouched into the couch for whatever pain awaited.
"You hate that one?"
He almost looked sad. My snobbish stare answered his question.
"Okay, then. I've got another parable."
At this point my head sank, but he continued.
"First, though, just hear me out on the matchmaker. The man may have been better off without love."
What? If he was going to twist his words, so help me. My mother then walked by, overheard the tension, and kept walking. I think this room haunted her too.
The matchmaker had revealed his future love, and the doppelganger showed her later death.
Perhaps the future grief of watching his wife murdered would be too much. John Jr. held up his hands as if displaying all the facts. Perhaps it wouldn't outweigh the years of love. Perhaps it would send him into an emotional spiral for years of widowhood. Who knows? Frustration spiked my tone, but I clamped down on yelling. "What are you trying to say, Dad? This sounds like the opposite of what you told me last time."
"Not necessarily the opposite. I'm trying to say that this ingratiation with Ray, this mirrored life you're pursuing, together, going to Cornell, everything, may not be worth it. Perhaps the garden should be abandoned."
I tensed up and fired back. "What did you expect when Dr. Jenkins fitted me out a decade ago? I see where this is going. You don't get to set me free at this point. You had your chance. There's no credit now with hollow words." I was not about to let my father absolve himself from Christian guilt or whatever drove this last-minute madness. This was not Ray's offer of freedom. This was some ridiculous box-checking by my father so he could say he tried. No way, not this time. Despite my anger, he held it together to make one last cursory effort. John Jr. sensed either I had chosen a path of self-elected suffering, or I had concocted some sinister plot of revenge. Nothing else explained my ongoing commitment to Ray and his family. Money was not enough. I was not a youth motivated by greed. Duty was not enough. The family responsibility meant little to me. Something unsettling drove this commitment, and my father, capricious in his parable interpretation, offered his last word of wisdom. Ignoring my accusation, he moved closer and sat right next to me. I wanted to run, but I did nothing.
"How about the other parable, then?"
He looked my way, but ignored the responding grimace. There was no stopping him. "You can tell everything about a person by the way he handles an umbrella." "I know," I nodded in peevish agreement. The only thing worse than the matchmaker was the umbrella story. College was looking very good.
"Please humor me," he petitioned.
Breathing slowly, I let the anger cool off and settled in for umbrellas.
"Some will use their umbrella at the slightest chance of rain. They are always prepared. The umbrella is their handicap, and they are safe, but they miss the drizzle. Neither dew nor storm will ever refresh them. Clouds will always haunt them. Some carry an umbrella for emergencies only, but rarely open it. Discerning among these individuals is more difficult, and takes greater observation. For some of these, the umbrella is a crutch. They are choosing to experience the rain. But when it blows harder, the umbrella quickly springs out. For others, they hold the umbrella more closely but refuse to open. They are brave, and the storm is a refreshing breeze. They hold the closed umbrella in mockery of the rain, defiantly signaling their strength." The analogy was exhausting, but I was resigned to listening. No anger on my part would stop him from finishing. "Then there are the types who never carry an umbrella. Here discernment is most difficult. It requires repeated observation or a good look in the face. It may be they are too forgetful, frequently unprepared for life and barely surviving. Or they may be the strongest of all, not needing a backup, a crutch of any sort. But it could also be they choose to suffer. They leave the umbrella and face the storms alone and empty. I have watched you closely in the rain, John. His face actually showed concern. What did he suspect? I could conjure where you stack up, what the analogy means. But I believe you know. You don't need to follow Raider Cornell. You don't need to follow me to sleep free. You can be free. This is not deathbed repentance. It is a real offer. He paused, and I recognized the chance to respond. I'm going to Cornell. I made my decision. I don't hold you responsible. This is my choice. I stood up for final emphasis and quick escape. Let the rains come. I'm prepared. Again, I was offered freedom, this time from my father. I did know what the umbrella meant for me, but I'm not sure my father knew. I wasn't choosing to suffer. I was pursuing freedom. Freedom for all. Rains be damned. Part 2. Samantha. Chapter 10. The Wizard. University coursework continued as if high school looped to repeat 4 more years. I still slept for Ray. Ray still charmed the masses, and there were still plenty of private school pricks in the Ivy League to make it feel like home, though the anti-discrimination charter kept them mostly well-behaved. Cornell offered no bachelor's program just for sleepers. I warily trimmed the minuscule fat from an already lean schedule to carve out sufficient time for classes and homework. Group projects, an institutional chance for the strong to carry the weak, were probably the greatest, unavoidable waste of time. Unlike high school, the sleeper-client drama and animosity were pleasantly absent, as was the disparaging sleeper-teacher dynamic. Teachers and students were keenly aware of any perceived offenses. Just 5 years prior, Cornell made national news when some careless student asked the only sleeper in his Intro to Sleep Science course, "How did it feel when you first received your implant?" The insensitive remark outraged the Cornell Sleepers Club, who then rallied the Sleep Union, which then snowballed the wisecrack into expulsion for the client and years of penance for the student body. No one dared say the wrong thing now to a sleeper. Socratic's seminar was off the table. Classes stuck to a clear syllabus with scrubbed, blessed, and very boring slides. Subjects requiring discussion were online, with enrolled students participating from their dormitories. This also cut building cost. In-person liberal arts classes employed a microaggression moderator, a tough individual, hired to filter student comments from their tablets before broadcasting them. The sleep program was considered so dangerous to sleepers that, even as an objective science, the department required all sleeper candidates sign a waiver accepting the traumatic risk. Despite the bureaucratic burden, I again enjoyed school. I could finally study subjects of my choosing. I gave up hiding my talent and attended the occasional painting elective to satiate my desire for the arts. Otherwise, I focused all my attention on pre-doctoral sleep studies. College education transfixed Ray. Predictably, he struggled to select his major. The fountain of knowledge available with a registration click confounded his thought processes. He needed it all, whatever it was. Choice immobilized him, so he avoided real choosing. We completed the same core subjects necessary for future sleep science PhDs. But while I slept, Ray flirted with every subject and every girl. Ultimately, he earned 2 degrees, chemistry and history, and 4 minors, art, Mandarin, mathematics, and government. He was the quintessential Renaissance man, a man born 500 years too late, a man who would have done well to live when a scholar could know everything. Administrators had little choice but to pander and bow to Ray's schizophrenic study habits. They were determined to appease the sleep-free heir. Happy, rich graduates often returned the favors in grants and donations. The Matsons were benefactors worth courting. But more than money, Ray proved his indestructible likability. It was not just a high school anomaly. Ray once again adroitly bewitched his professors and colleagues. Every professor fell in love with this awestruck, scattered-brained billionaire. All except Lucius Santos. Mentorship unlocked my success at Cornell. Ray could dance between his many interests, but I would excel through focus and opportunity. The wise wizard delivered this opportunity. If such fiction really exists, Lucius Santos descended from either wizards or gypsy fortune-tellers. Either dressed in bow tie against a solid autumn color shirt,
or donning the most outrageously patterned lab coat. Lucius did not want to blend with his peers. His parents had immigrated from Brazil before his birth, but the wizard clutched to the pizzazz of life instilled by his mother, along with a hint of her native accent. Salt and pepper hair revealed he was in his aging work years, but his tanned face had the look of youth, an outcome of his active life and positive outlook. Approaching students as investments rather than annoyances, Dr. Santos never met with you to merely assist with classwork or tutor on nebulous minutiae. He dedicated one-on-one time to divining a student's deeper concerns and counseling to resolution. "John, put aside this organic chemistry," he directed one afternoon as I struggled to master the assigned homework. I pushed the book away as instructed, cautious of his powers of perception. We sat across from each other at the large round table. The office hosted floor-to-ceiling books covering all topics, including nearly everything written about borrowed sleep, and he had read them all. It was a bow tie day, black, tied loose, with white polka dots. Attire was always distracting until you met his eyes. Then you were trapped. His eyes began to narrow as if dozing, yet his gaze sharpened on my eyes, interlocking in the wizard stare. These were his trademark moves to detect true emotion and purpose. "There's something wrong today. You are hiding discouragement or anger." These were statements, somewhat seeking but confident, as if he could smell my emotion. His head nodded slowly, a gesture again indicating sleepiness to the untrained eye. I would learn after years of tutelage and homework visits that the nod carried him between thoughts to conclusion. The slight bounce and affirmation he had delved into the realm of truth, beyond manufactured walls. I squirmed in my seat, aware only by rumor of his interrogation tactics. Keeping a private life meant I should have avoided this man, but I needed homework help. "What's bothering you? Tell me." Lucius then completed the wizard pattern, closing his eyes yet further, until only an imperceptible shred of opaqueness returned my gaze. It was my turn to speak. The blind wizard had cracked his victim. I don't know if in this pose he could see his students, or simply see through them, but we were hopeless to resist the blind wizard technique. I related a morning fight with one of the school administrators. I had challenged the bureaucrat with irrefutable proof on a certain matter, thankfully not sleeper-related. She had hoped her trained recalcitrance would force me to back down, but she was unaware of my own stubbornness when on truth's side. Rather than exercise self-control and humbly concede, the administrator had grown hostile. With other students in hearing range, she started yelling at me before surrendering off the anger cycle into tears of excuses. The emotional display was awkward and inappropriate. Without true apology, she then belittled me again before rejecting my case. It was the same game fought so many times in so many classrooms when I was young. A chance to prove her own superiority, if not by merit, then by show of power. I thought I was free from these nuisances and discrimination. Lucius listened to the experience, resumed his slow nod, and then offered his wisdom, every word precisely spoken. "I am impressed you came to me rather than the review board. An offense like that would guarantee her fired for violating your safe space. A tough skin will prepare you well for the world is rarely kind, and sheltering you from that truth serves no one." I couldn't believe he would openly dismiss the rhetoric that had brainwashed campuses. I wanted to laugh with joy hearing an honest adult admit the world was anything but safe. He continued, knowing the compliment alone would not fully lift my spirit. "She's a silly person, not worth your emotion. You were in the right, and the right triumphs. There will always be those seeking to break us when threatened by our intellect and purpose. They are of no consequence." His reassurance was a miraculous boon to my woeful malady. The eyelids opened, the subtle nodding finished, and he returned to his desk chair across the office, our chemistry session apparently over. I'd have to find another resource to understand this week's assignment. Every student who entered his office underwent the same treatment. I heard first-hand accounts of his counseling on inadequacy, rejection, depression, deceased parents, relationship struggles, suicidal feelings, guilt, bitterness, and so on. The wise wizard served all that would find him. In like manner, he discovered Ray and all of Ray's quixotic dreams and inner quagmires. My problem of the day turned out inconsequential, but the established relationship was historic. Over the years, I would have countless encounters with this modern Merlin. He became my official mentor after the first session, volunteering for the required role. As I left his office, Lucius issued me a challenge. He handed me a book waiting seemingly on his desk for me. "Read this, John, and come back to discuss." The book was an esoteric piece based on student surveys about maximizing the college experience. I graciously accepted the invitation to read, unaware that I would have many more such exchanges on the greatest diversity of subjects before doctoral graduation. Lucius's tutelage was truly that of the masters. Chapter 11. Job Offers. Dr. Lucius Santos was the first university professor to exploit Sleep-Free's success. The original creation, Sleep-Free Prototype 1, Desmond Mattson's masterpiece, was born in a makeshift venture capitalist laboratory, not academia's ivory tower. Desmond Sleep-Free Incorporated sprung from the ground with virile vigor. He patented, commercialized, and dominated. When Desmond and my grandfather transformed sleeping from a novelty to a cash cow, certain components needed farming out. The nascent Sleep-Free could not do and run everything. Desmond could not truly abandon research, but the responsibilities as the new CEO and president stretched him thin, even with my grandfather sleeping day and night. So Desmond outsourced application research. Desmond hired the country's preeminent sleep scientist, Dr. Lucius Santos of Cornell University, in a long-term corporate contract. It was a marriage of convenience. Sleep-Free solely financed Lucius's on-campus research, including a cadre of graduates and the finest instruments. In return, Sleep-Free maintained absolute control over initial publication. Disclosure clauses and legislation protected Lucius's right to ultimately publish, but only after a 2-year waiting period. Thus, Sleep-Free preserved their scientific and technological advantage. Lucius, a brilliant but untenured professor, earned his retirement package. As Sleep-Free's wealth grew exponentially, the company expanded. Sleep-Free established its own research division, with a broad focus covering not only product R&D, but also fundamental sleep science. However, rather than cut university funding, Desmond Mattson preserved the native relationship with Dr. Santos. Technically, they didn't need his research. The company's R&D division had long since surpassed the university on expertise and new discoveries. Rather, they reserved the link to fuel new blood. Today, Dr. Santos's real contribution is intellectual training. The world leaders in sleep science spawned from his pool of researchers. Of all his litany of accomplishments, Lucius prides himself most on the caliber of students leaving his nest. They are his children, legacy, and testament. Lucius delivers the sleep science training and work ethic, Sleep-Free provides the salary, and Lucius is guaranteed ample corporate funding. I entered freshman year hoping to study under Lucius Santos. The sleep specialty submajor within the chemistry department was the most popular and competitive program on campus. Professors handpicked assistants, not vice versa, and spots with Lucius were tight. Cynically, I knew Dr. Santos would hire me, if all else, because of Ray. Dr. Santos couldn't refuse Ray nor decline to employ his glum sleeper baggage, me. But I wanted hiring of my own accord and merit. I wanted a path decision truly my own, severed from Ray's tentacles. Dr. Santos approached me after freshman year finals. I had completed his test and done well. I knew my performance because, unlike all other professors, Lucius graded his test through the night to enable immediate feedback to his students. He'd started the tradition when he was young, powered by his own sleeper. When he, like all other clients, lost the ability to receive transfer due to his old age, he maintained all-night grading at his own expense. Sleep-Free truly redefined the maxim, sleep is for the old. Sometime after the age of 60, the body simply cannot process the foreign invasion of secondhand sleep. The dreams, the REM patterns, the drugs, all of it, and you're on your own, finally liberated to dream for yourself, and too old to live those dreams. Lucius had called me to his office after learning my grade. Such summonses were rare and disconcerting. Normally I came to him by choice. I entered apprehensively, even though my recent high marks should have inspired confidence. It was another bow tie day, a formality to end the semester in its finest, struck against a solid orange dress shirt. I almost squinted my own eyes at the color choice. "John, come in. Please close the door." He beckoned from behind his desk as I stood poised in the doorframe. He commanded respect, and our ritual for my entering his office tended to mirror the pupil entering a dojo. "Sit down, John. I want to talk to you about your future." I was piqued, settling into my assigned chair at the work table. "I wondered if you would work for me when you return from summer holidays. You can be my undergraduate research assistant." Elation came over me. He was asking me. If I'd thought long enough, I might have done the math to realize another job meant no hours for eating or personal sleeping. Somewhere in my mind, I remembered working for Ray and Carl simultaneously. "That's perfect!" I all but shouted. "It's exactly why I came to Cornell." Then historical self-deprecation seized my brain. "But why pick me, Dr. Santos? Can you really hire 2 assistants from our class? Surely you've already spoken to Ray." "I can do what I see best, John, and no, I have not hired Ray. I want you." There was no disdain for Ray in his voice, only a timbre conveying trust in me and trust in his decision. It was clear I should not doubt his action, nor ask again. Yet I protested uncharacteristically on Ray's behalf. It was as if I believed this was a hoax, a trick like those used by my elementary school teachers to ingrain my inferiority to Ray. "But Ray did better in this class. Ray is a Matson, the Matson. Ray," he cut me off, "I want you." He paused to let his words sink deep before continuing emphatically. "You're driven and want this position more than any other student. Your dedication and passion will more than compensate for your slightly lower test scores. But you don't understand, Dr. Santos. I am linked to Ray. He is my unavoidable destiny. And though I do not wholly like him, a fact you know from our discussions, I have to work with him. We need this training together." I petitioned, knowing that my ability to change the future required symbiotic strength with Ray. If we finished Cornell with different paths, our divergence after college would be irreparable. I needed Ray to be the best possible sleep scientist and fully dependent on our shared link. Lucius ran his right hand through the waves of black and white hair, an expression I interpreted as resigned sadness for my situation. Every time I could be separated from Ray, I pushed us closer. "John, how do you know this is what Ray wants? Even he doesn't know what he wants. I can only guide a student's destiny, not force it upon him." "But you must," I pressed. His eyes closed as the wizard appeared. "You are happy in this role, major and future, because you have chosen it." His speech slowed methodically to give me time to digest. "You may think that your path was chosen for you, but you've chosen these studies. You are dedicated to sleep science, and so will be happy working for me, truly happy and satisfied. You can accept your sacrifice of all extracurriculars and distractions, if it means working in my lab and reaching your goal. Ray is not you." He shook his head in emphasis, but the eyes stayed slits. "He may be at Cornell, and he will of course work for me, some day. His father would not have it otherwise. But he will not be happy. His mind is in too many places, and sleep science is not his choice. It is yours. It is his father's, his grandfather's, even fate's choice for Ray, but it is not his own, and thus he will be miserable. Only choice can give him peace, only recognizing he is here freely and wants it. Then he'll be ready, and he will approach me. My offering of this job now will mean nothing, regardless of his acceptance, until this change happens." I sighed in understanding, but didn't give up. Instead, I replied to Lucius's sound wisdom with my only leverage. "I can't join your group unless you also hire Ray. I'm sorry to be difficult, but it's necessary." Lucius's eyes popped wide, and his face contorted with surprise at my insubordination, but quickly softened again. He nodded his head, pondering the implications. He could have called my bluff, knowing how much I wanted the job. Instead, he replied with wise surrender. "John, enemy or friend, you watch over Ray like a nursing mother, perhaps only to eat your own kind when sufficiently fat. I'll hire Ray, and he will accept. He is capricious, but whether by my persuasion or his father's, he will accept. Have a good summer, and return prepared to work." With that conclusion, he handed me several books for summer reading. The dominoes were lining up in preparation for the fall. I worked for Lucius Santos for 8 years, from undergrad through doctorate. Carl mentored me through invective and dream intelligence. Lucius assumed a softer approach of wisdom and empathy, along with many extra reading assignments. I never communicated my ultimate purpose, but my brazen and dangerously risky thesis plan on lucid dreaming and sleep transference surely sparked his curiosity.